Halloween likely dates back to a time before Christianity, starting as a Celtic pagan festival called Samhain. During Samhain, it was believed that the boundary between the world of the living and the dead became thinner, allowing spirits to cross over. While we don't have many direct records of how Samhain was celebrated, legends and old stories give us clues. This suggests the festival involved eerie rituals and traditions that were much darker and more mysterious than the Halloween we know today. Hi, I'm Alina. Welcome back to my channel. In the bogs of Ireland, ancient bodies have been discovered, still remarkably preserved. Their skin is coated with a thick layer of black peat, which has kept their flesh from decaying. Even though they died hundreds of years ago, their faces remain unchanged and their hair is still intact. These bodies weren't just randomly placed there. Archaeologists believe many of them were part of ceremonial sacrifices. Their clothing and grooming suggest they were from the ruling class, fitting with all legends of kings being ritually killed during Samhain. If a year was marked by plagues or famines, the people blamed their king. As a result, the king would be sacrificed and replaced, with his body cast into the bog. On Samhain, people believed that the barrier between the world of the living and the dead would open, allowing spirits to cross over. Loved ones who had passed away were thought to roam the earth, sometimes trying to return to their old homes. In some areas, people showed kindness to these wandering souls by leaving food outside their doors or even leaving the doors open, preparing a place for the spirits to rest. However, not all spirits were peaceful. According to an Irish legend, a fearsome creature named Eileen would emerge from the other world when the portal was open. Every Samhain, Eileen was said to burn the town of Tara to the ground. Fearing dangerous spirits like Eileen, people in some places would lock their doors and stay inside on Samhain, too frightened to go out. During Samhain, people would often try to connect with spirits to learn about the future. Strange rituals were performed to reveal whether good fortune or bad luck was coming their way. Many of these rituals were referred to as spells. Some were harmless. For instance, one involved young girls standing quietly outside a neighbor's house. They'd hold a mouthful of water and a pinch of salt in each hand, while listening to the conversations inside. It was believed that the first name of an unmarried man they heard would be the name of the man they'd eventually marry. Another ritual involved men opening the barn doors and pretending to toss corn into the wind 3 times. After the 3rd time, a spirit was said to pass through, showing the men a vision of the roles they would play in adulthood. Boys were told to remove the barn door hinges, or else the spirit might stay behind to hunt them. During Samhain, fairies would leave their homes and wander the human world. But these weren't the cute, sparkly fairies. These were terrifying creatures, more like monsters, making this part of the festival especially frightening. Led by the king of the dead, the fairies rode on storm clouds, accompanied by an army of hellbounds, collecting the souls of the newly dead. But during Samhain, they weren't picky. Sometimes they would snatch the living along with the dead, dragging them to the afterlife. On the day of the festival, people would avoid the fairy mounds, those mysterious hills scattered across the Irish landscape, fearing that if they wandered too close, fairy might pull them down into the underworld. Owinagat, also known as the Cave of the Cats, was considered the most dangerous place during Samhain. This narrow hole in a hillside was said to be filled with dark forces. According to legend, centuries ago, the fairy queen visited the cave, and her maidservant loved it so much that she decided to stay. Since then, it became a hunt for evil spirits. In medieval times, many people have claimed to have seen terrifying creatures come out of the cave. One tale described described a ghostly woman who appeared every year, stealing 9 of the finest animals from local herds. Others spoke of strange beasts emerging from the cave, and some even believed demonic cats were unleashed during Samhain to terrorize the nearby town. A big part of celebrating Samhain involved drinking as much as possible. Since Samhain marked the last big harvest before winter, people gathered all the grain before it could be ruined by frost. This led to an abundance of alcohol, and without any way to refrigerate it, they had to drink it or let it go to waste. As a result, drinking became a huge part of the festival, and people drank heavily during Samhain. In fact, getting drunk was so closely tied to the celebration that almost every ancient Irish story about drunkenness is said during Samhain. Some legends, like the intoxication of the Ulstermen, revolve entirely around people getting drunk during the festival. Fire played a central role in the Samhain festival, with families across the country lighting fires in their homes. The specific rituals surrounding the fires varied from place to place, and in some regions they took on a darker tone. In Moray, boys would go from house to house asking for peat to burn the witches. Once they had enough, they'd build a large fire and lie down as close as possible without getting burned, letting the smoke roll over their bodies. Their friends would then leap over them and through the smoke, believing it granted them magical protection. In parts of Wales, people would leap over the fire and run away, pretending that a creature called the Black Sow would catch the slowest runner. Allegedly, this was a milder version of an older ritual. In the past, one runner would be caught, symbolically burdened with all the year's misfortunes, and thrown into the bonfire as a human sacrifice. Costumes were an important part of Samhain, much like they are in modern Halloween. However, instead of dressing up as superheroes, people in those times disguised themselves as the dead. They would paint their faces black and wear outfits made from straw, hoping that the wandering spirits would mistake them for fellow ghosts. Some even wore the skins of freshly slaughtered animals. Samhain was also a time for preparing for winter, which meant slaughtering a large number of animals. To protect themselves from the spirits that roamed the earth, people would take animal skulls and hides, turning them into eerie demonic-looking costumes to blend in with the otherworldly beings. Over time, Samhain, the ancient Celtic festival, not only blurred the line between the living and the dead, but also between genders. As the festival evolved into Halloween, men began dressing in drag and walking through the streets as part of the celebration. By the mid-19th century, most of the groups that went door to door on Halloween were made up of men dressed as women, in Wales often referred to as hags. These hags would knock on doors asking for food or shelter. If a house was especially dirty, the men dressed as women would step inside, start sweeping and hum as they worked, mimicking the actions of a disapproving wife. In ancient times, Samhain was a festival that some legends suggest involved child sacrifice. According to Irish stories, people believed that their gods required sacrifices during this celebration. One tale mentions that at the start of winter, communities had to give up 2/3 of their possessions, which included their crops, milk, and even their children. A Christian monk wrote about a place called Meg-Slecht, where there was an idol for a god named Crom Crach. The monk described how people would sacrifice their firstborn children during Samhain, crying out in sorrow as they poured their children's blood around the idol. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!